I want to jump right in to this massive Russian breach into both the public and the private sector. Give us a little rundown, given your expert perch, of what you think we've just seen.
Well, Ian, when I was at Homeland Security, I used to tell people, let's prepare and plan for the next attack, not the last attack. I used to try to encourage my people to think aggressively, to try to stay one step ahead of the enemy. Unfortunately, bad cyber actors like this most recent one are increasingly aggressive, tenacious, ingenious. This attack, using software upgrades, was both ingenious and ironic, using a software intended to promote cybersecurity as the tool to implant malware was extraordinarily clever, and it's highly regrettable that some of our most sophisticated actors in this country in cyberspace, like the Department of Homeland Security or other elements of our national government, didn't catch this sooner. It took FireEye, apparently, to catch this. And so my assessment of this is it is yet another example of how the bad guys continue to stay one step ahead of the good guys in trying to defend against this kind of thing. And as I sit here, I think we are yet to fully understand the extent of the damage caused by this attack, and most fundamentally, whether it is simply an act of traditional surveillance, which many governments engage in, or it is some form of offensive attack, which would merit a very, very serious response, in my view.
For those that are just kind of watching the headlines around this, should we be a little shocked that this actually could have happened at the hands of a foreign government?
No, we should not be shocked, unfortunately. And your question is a very, very legitimate one. The one thing I will say is when you're on defense, when you're in national security, when you're in Homeland Security, there are a lot of bad things that we do prevent from happening that somebody like you and me in private life don't hear about. And it is the reality that one failure will be the equivalent of 1,000 successes. So there are a lot of cyber attacks, a lot of attempts at infiltration that are prevented and caught that you don't necessarily hear about. It's the big one, like the current one, that we do hear about and obviously need to be concerned about.
Is there anything that we know thus far that implies that this was more than just espionage? Because again, I've heard lots of intemperate things on the internet, shocking, including from members of Congress saying this was an act of war. Is there any reason to believe that is the case from what we know so far?
Well, in reacting to a national security event, I rarely take my guidance from individual House members reacting on Twitter, and I recommend that you not do that either. There are indicators when you implant malware that it can be done for all sorts of reasons. When I was in Homeland Security, the cyber intrusion that I would worry about most is a national actor, a nation state actor, one of the more sophisticated ones, implanting malware in critical infrastructure, and it lies in wait to do something, whether it is to exfiltrate data, whether it is to degrade something, whether it is to destroy something, whether it is to change an identity. You don't really know until the trigger is pulled. I gave testimony before Congress a couple of years ago, and one of the things I addressed in my testimony is under what circumstances a cyber attack should be considered an act of war. And my basic conclusion was that if the cyber attack amounts to physical destruction, loss of life, like any other more traditional kinetic attack, then that should be considered an act of war. And so we do get excited about these things, as we should be, but we have to also consider the other side of the equation, which is what is the United States capable of doing? How might the United States respond to this intrusion in ways seen or unseen? And so we do have awesome capabilities in cyberspace ourselves as a country. But But going back to your original question, Ian, cybersecurity is a public-private partnership. There are cyber experts in government. There are cyber experts in financial services. There are cyber experts in the defense industrial base. And apparently this intrusion was far-reaching. It stretched into the private sector, some of our most sophisticated actors in the private sector. And so we don't know the answer to the question, to what extent should this be considered an attack? And we don't know whether we've discovered the full extent of it. We don't know whether it's implanted in a system that you and I use every day, and we just haven't discovered it yet.